Okay, so today's tomato review is going to be on the golden currant tomato, Solanum pimpinellifolium. Alright, so let's take a closer look at this tomato. This is not your Solanum lycopersicum tomato. This is different. This is a Solanum pimpinellifolium, I believe it's pronounced. It's a different type of tomato. Some people even say that it's not in the tomato family, but some people like me say that it is in a tomato family because it tastes like a tomato, it looks like a tomato, the plant grows like a tomato, even the plant leaves look like a tomato, but there's a lot of different attributes to this that make people kind of want to say it's more like a berry than it is a tomato. But it is a tomato, it is a pimpinellifolium, and it's not a lycopersicum. Alright, so I just want to get that out of the gate. Alright, so anyway, let's look at some of these bracts on here, and to zoom you out a little. And you can see how long these bracts get. That's a very long bract, and they can get a little longer than this too. It looks like there's probably about maybe a dozen tomatoes on there. I mean, if you want to count them, you go ahead and count them. But they can get a little longer than that. They can get as long as, I believe, 24 tomatoes on one bract. You get quite a few tomatoes off of each one of these. And they range, in general, from like a bract that long to a bract this long. I guess it really depends on where the bract comes out. If it's exposed to like sunlight right away, it seems like the bracts will be shorter, but you know, more mature tomatoes will come out quickly. Whereas if it gets like partial sunlight, the bracts will just keep getting longer and longer and longer. They'll Dixie chain down, like you see here, all the way down to this point, and they just keep going and going and going. See here how it looks on here? See, it just keeps growing and getting longer and longer. It doesn't like come out in one string and you got a whole bunch of tomatoes. It comes out and it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and putting out tomatoes. Very strange kind of way of producing these tomatoes. So here's one of them. I'll pick one off. And they pop right off. It's a very tiny tomato. Some people say that the spoon tomato is the smallest tomato in the world. I tend to disagree with that. I believe that this tomato, in my opinion, is definitely much smaller than the spoon tomato. Spoon tomato is very small, but not quite as small as this. This is much smaller. This thing is probably, I mean, you could see it, how small it is, how tiny that is. You know, like this would be, I'm not sure what to compare it to. That's like a regular tomato. And this ain't even that big. This is, you know, this would be like a grape tomato right here. That's like a grape tomato size. That's how small that is. I don't have any other tomatoes for me to compare it with. But these are very tiny. They're about the size of a berry. Most berries that you see in the wild, it's smaller than the most larger blueberries. It's like one of the small blueberries. It's very tiny. It's a very tiny little tomato. And we'll cut one open to see if we can show you the inside. Now, I don't know how easy this is going to be, but nevertheless, we'll get trying anyway. That's what it looks like on the inside. Now, as you can see, it very much looks like a berry. Kind of looks like one of those sunberries I got. Now, the interesting thing about this tomato as far as flavor goes, I was eating these in the beginning of the year when they first started coming out, and they had a real nice sweet flavor to them in the beginning. They tasted really good. But now at the end of the year with the cold weather coming in and its plants starting to die off and everything, I don't know, the flavor is not really, I'll describe it in a minute. I'm going to eat a couple of these and try to give you an idea what it tastes like, but yeah, that's what it looks like. You know, they're easy to eat. You can just pick a handful of these things and throw them right in your salad. You're good to go. You don't need to worry about slicing up tomatoes. You just throw a bunch of these in there. You could cut them in half if you want, but I would just throw them in there and you're done. You're not making a big deal out of making your dinner that night. You could just grab a bunch of these, fill up. You know, I'd say if you're normally used to eating a whole tomato in your salad, I would say, grab yourself a good sized handful, maybe about 3 or 4 bracts worth of it, because you want to, have enough tomato in your salad to enjoy it. So you're going to want to make sure you pick enough of them, because they are quite tiny. These are very, very small. So let me taste it and kind of describe the flavor. The flavor is kind of off. It's just an off flavor this year. It doesn't really taste like a tomato. It does have that after tanginess flavor that carries in with a very light undertone of tomato, but it's very light. It's like I said, in the beginning of the year, they tasted pretty good. Right now, they taste more like a berry of some sort. It doesn't even taste like a tomato. So, but like I said, in the beginning of the year, when I first started getting them off the plant, this was one of the first tomato plants to put something out where I could eat it this year. So I was getting these probably first week of July, second week of July. I was already picking some of these off. But this is more of a berry than it is a tomato. And I'll try it again. Try to describe the flavor. It's kind of hard. Doesn't really taste too much like a tomato, but then again, the aftertaste does. So let's try it again. It's very hard to describe the flavor. It's really a unique flavor to itself. It's not bad tasting, but it is going to take a little bit of a mature taste palate. Somebody who likes tomatoes and are used to experimenting with a large variety of tomatoes. If you're somebody who just eats store-bought tomatoes and you start eating these, your palate may not be able to adjust to that right off the bat. You probably might pucker up. But to a tomato eater like myself, they're not bad, but this seems to be like a timing or a seasonal thing. You really want to pick these at a certain time of the year to get the best flavor out of it. And it seems like when they first start coming out and they're in the warm part of the summer, they tasted the best. Right now it's the fall. We've been getting a lot of frost on a regular basis. So they're not freezing up and getting frost, but they're getting colder weather at night, and they're really starting to take on a different flavor profile. It's really definitely different. The flavor is good. It's not like a bad flavor. Try to describe the sweet and tangy part. Sweetness-wise, it's kind of low on the sweetness. I'd say 15 maybe on the sweetness. Not very much sweetness at all. Maybe, like I say, 15. Might even be 20 if you want to, bring it there. Maybe a handful of them might bring that flavor up combined to like a 20 on the sweetness. Tang is very high. Tang is like 35. So the tang and the sweetness is way out. But the tang isn't a lemony type of a tang. It doesn't make your mouth pucker when you eat it. It's kind of a nice tomatoey, smooth type of tang. It really sits in the back of your tongue. It really delivers that little bit of flavor it does have to the back of your tongue, and it just kind of hangs around a little bit. It doesn't really go away very quickly. It's got a nice aftertaste, but it is unique to itself. The flavor of this tomato is very unique. It has its own kind of flavor. Has like a little bit of a tomatoey flavor, but at the same time, it's unique. I can't even describe it. It's just something different. Has a very different type of flavor to it. I'll try one more and then we'll end the review. But I'm just trying to give you an idea that it's, you eat these, you're not going to get like a regular tomato flavor. This is more of a berry than it is a tomato. Don't get me wrong, they're nice. I could eat these things all day. The problem with these, though, is right now is I have to spit the skins out. I'm not doing that on camera, but I am spitting all these skins out because they're just thick skins. It's like the inside comes out right away, and there's nothing but skin left. So I'm trying to do a video, so I don't really want to mess around too much chewing the skins and everything. Just want to eat them, get the flavor, and then try to get back to camera. We'll try eating 3 of them. We'll see if we could really overload the palate with these and see what a handful of these things do. Okay, now that I ate a handful of them, you really did get a nice tomatoey flavor. Eating them one by one, it was really hard to grab the flavor. It's very light. But I just ate like 3, 4 of them, 5 of them at once. I really got a nice tomatoey flavor out of that time. That was nice. But like I say, there's a funny aftertaste that comes in after it. I'm not sure if it's part of the wet part of it or if it's the skins. I think it's the skins because that flavor starts to come in as you chew the skin up. So this funny flavor undertone comes in. It's just kind of different, should I say, and just kind of throws you off. But the main juicy part with the seeds and everything, it was like a very nice tomato. Very enjoyable, actually. I wouldn't rate this tomato as high as I would rate my other tomatoes, like the Everglade tomato and stuff like that. I wouldn't rate it as high. But I am going to rate this as a number 2. And I was going to rate it as a 3 because the flavor has got some awkward undertones to it. But because this tomato is such a heavy producer, I have to kind of bring this up. This is a great famine food tomato. So if you're looking to establish yourself in a rural environment and you're going to live off the land and you're looking to primitive technology, some people are referring to, and you're trying to live very primitive, and you're looking for certain types of tomato or vegetables to grow in the wild where you can just establish it one time and you'll have them every year in and year out. This is one of these tomatoes that I would probably put up in that famine food area type thing. Great survival food. You plant these things one time, you'll probably have them come up every year in and year out. Heavy producing tomato plant. I mean, you'll literally get anywhere between 300, 400, 500 tomatoes to, maybe 5,000, 10,000 tomatoes off of one plant. I'm talking massive amounts of tomatoes. Way more than you're ever going to consume. What you're looking at here isn't even everything that's on that plant. I just picked enough for me to be able to eat for the next day or so, do seeds, and do this video. So outside of that, I left everything else there, let it dry and harden on the plant, and then I'll pick those seeds off, and I'll throw those tomatoes out around the yard and let them come up wild next year. And these all have nice regular fry seeds available for the public. So, but this is different than the spoon tomato too. I just want to make sure I note that because I have grown a spoon tomato. And the spoon tomato doesn't quite come up golden like this, though it does come up like an orange color, like a reddish orange kind of color. These are more of a golden tomato, though they look really orange right now. And a spoon tomato can look orange almost as much as this. But there is definitely a difference to this and the spoon tomato. I could tell you that just by looking at it. Like I said, the spoon tomato, they're a little larger than this. This tomato is very consistent on the size. This is about as big as you'll see it, and they can get kind of small, much smaller like you see here, which are absolutely tiny. I mean, this is the size of half the size of a pea. Though they're not fully developed, I'm just saying some of them on here did ripen that small, believe it or not. There are a few in here that did ripen tiny like that. Here's a tiny one. I mean, look how tiny that is. I mean, this thing is, that is a world's smallest tomato right there. That is literally the size of a little tiny berry. So, that's it. Rating-wise, I'm going to rate it as a number 2 because of the growth factor on it, and you don't need much maintenance to grow these. You just plop a few seeds down somewhere and let them grow, and that's it. There's no watering, there's no nurturing. Just plant them and walk away. That's the best thing you could do with this type of tomato plant. It's a famine type of plant. It's just almost like a weed. And once this thing establishes itself in your property, it's just going to come up every year. So it's one of those kind of tomatoes, and because of that reason, I'm going to bring it up to a number 2. But taste-wise, because I'm used to these kind of off tastes, but taste-wise, I would definitely rate it a 3, only because I know a lot of people would eat these and they'd be like, oh, that's awful. I know people would. Unless you're a tomato lover like me, then you're going to have a little issue with that aftertaste. Though you might grow them and eat them in the beginning of the year and you'll get a really good experience. Because I ate these earlier and they did taste sweet and good. And then all of a sudden now they're like awkward tasting. So for me, I'm fine. I'm going to eat them. They taste good. But if I was to give them to somebody, a guest or something, they might not appreciate that. They might think I was pulling a prank on them or something. So, but that's it. That's your review for the golden currant tomato. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Chico, stop.